Hi there, it's Monday, March 23rd, 2026, and this is Washington in Focus Daily. I'm Carleen Johnson, the Center Square's Washington State government reporter. And nope, Governor Ferguson has yet to sign the income tax bill. It's not on his Monday bill signing, at least the afternoon agenda, and the office is not responding to questions, at least from this reporter, as to when that bill will be on the calendar. So every morning we just kind of look at the calendar early in the day and see where he's going to be, what bills he's going to be signing. He has up until early April, so there's been no suggestion he's not going to sign this bill. Could be a partial veto, some things there that maybe he didn't like. We'll be right on top of that. I promise you. We're using every avenue we know to try and find out when that bill is going to be signed into law, because we'll be there when it happens. Reminder for you that there is another very controversial bill that we are waiting for signing on. Senate Bill 5974. This is the anti-sheriff bill. This is the one to let the governor's member-appointed Criminal Justice Training Commission decertify an elected sheriff. And many see this as politically motivated, maybe targeted at a particular Pierce County sheriff by the name of Keith Swank. Who knows if in fact he was the sole motivation for this. But there are a group of sheriffs, including Mason County Sheriff Ryan Sperling, who you're going to hear from here shortly, who sent a letter to Governor to Governor Ferguson right after Senate Bill 5974 was, passed in the legislature and the session came to an end, that sent him this veto encouragement saying, there's parts of this thing that we're really encouraging you. We figure you're going to sign it, but if you're going to sign it, please take these certain elements out of the bill. They don't know at this point if, in fact, that letter has, fallen on some soft ears or just exactly what the governor is going to do. So we're going to get into that. And then you probably saw this if you were at all on social media, on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, anywhere else. There were some posts about a very controversial art project in the Puyallup school district, specifically Puyallup High School, a visual arts class, and a student put up a pretty derogatory collage of drawings and other images, graphics of President Trump. It was kind of a Animal Farm type inspired image. That's the first thing that came to my mind when I looked at it. It has since been taken down, and the school district is responding. And Puyallup Senator Chris Gildon is as well. I just talked to him this morning. I'm going to be showing you some of that conversation with Senator Gildon. This is certainly not the first time the Puyallup School District of late has been in the headlines, a not so good spotlight in recent months. So we'll remind you some of those other stories that we've covered at the Center Square. And the Puyallup School District has a lot of attention on it right now. So here we go. The wait continues for signing of the income tax, the millionaire's tax. And Governor Ferguson had two scheduled bill signings today. The income tax was not on the agenda. You may recall just after the legislation passed and sine die, which was on March 12th, the governor was asked if he felt the majority had done enough during the legislative session to address affordability. You recall that was really the buzzword of the session. Majority Democrats kept saying, our single focus is on affordability, affordability, affordability. And Ferguson said during that press conference after sine die that the income tax really, he took the income tax that passed to be all about making life more affordable for Washingtonians.
Within the millionaire's tax, for example, that's literally going to be a record tax break for business owners across Washington state. We have, for example, the working families tax credit that's going to be expanded to 460,000 families. All those are steps that I think are really important. The sales tax exemptions. So also just in terms of on the housing side, we need to make our things that happen right away. We made huge investments in housing. When I campaigned for governor, many of you have heard me say this before, and going to every 39 county, the issue I heard the most was the need for more housing, more affordable housing. And I'm excited about that investment in housing, but equally excited, and we'll have a chance to work through these bills in the coming days as well. But once again, just like last session, lots of legislation to try and streamline our processes, to build more housing, to open up more locations to build housing, and I'm very excited about that as well. And that's been, in often cases, that's been a bipartisan effort by the legislature. That's going to make life better for Washingtonians to have more of that housing. So I think that's been a focal point for us, is to try and take actions that make life more affordable, and we're going to continue to focus in that way.
Morgan Irwin is the government affairs vice president for the Association of Washington Business. He said the Democrats' new income tax bill, they believe, is going to crush the business community in Washington state. He told me even if current big businesses don't relocate, the CEOs don't relocate, as we've already seen some of that happen here in Washington state, um, it's the next big thing that will not locate here in Washington state. He says that's really going to be the future impact of the income tax.
Trying to attract the next Microsoft is always really hard, in terms of like getting their entire headquarters and all that stuff. And there's a lot of benefits that come to society from having that sort of a hub or center in your state. But what we have been able to land pretty successfully in years past are folks like Blue Origin, right? So they're
Right.
making satellites. We've got our aerospace industry. We've got a couple of industries that it makes sense to start your business in Washington state, and those sectors are aerospace, technology, or something that's very, very high electricity use, because traditionally we've had fairly low electricity rates here in Washington state. We have some of the greenest power and lowest cost of anywhere in the world because of the hydroelectric system we have here. That is no longer an advantage. Our prices are continuing to go up. We have lost multiple billion-dollar investments into the state in the last few years because the energy prices are not as cheap as they used to be. And if we layer taxes on top of increasing energy rates, there really is no reason for somebody to come to the far, left-hand corner of America to build their business. You're not near anything other than ports. And so if there's no reason to build here, then why would you? If you can do the exact same business, but you can do it in Livingston, Montana, and you can make 20% more because of the tax structure, why would you do it, in Bellevue? Why would you do it in Redmond? And that's really what we're running into. Is not that businesses hate Washington. Washington's a gorgeous state, like it is. And maybe this is pride because I grew up here, but I don't know that you can find a prettier state anywhere in the country. But you just have businesses that are making a business decision and saying, well, I can do the exact same business model in some other state and make a lot more money doing it. And that's what they're choosing to do.
Now, you may recall that Governor Ferguson objected to the bill in its early form, pressing for greater small business tax relief. And then April Berg, Democrat from Mill Creek, who's the chair of the House Finance Committee, she broke the logjam with her striking amendment that did expand the working families tax credit to additional households, increased some of the business and occupation tax credits for small business, and added some other sales tax exemptions to kind of help lower income families. There an exemption on diapers and hygiene products and over the counter medicines. So the governor has indicated the way this thing passed, he's willing to sign. Any changes coming? We wait to see. So let's move into thing two for today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. Another highly contentious bill, one that blew up social media during the session, was Senate Bill 5974. This will allow the Criminal Justice Training Commission to decertify sheriffs. A lot of opposition to this bill during public hearings. There were a couple of rallies held on the steps of the legislative building. King County right now is the only place in the state of Washington with an appointed sheriff, appointed by the King County executive. Otherwise, these are elected positions in the other 38 of Washington's 39 counties. And people take a lot of pride in the fact that they can elect a sheriff. They can choose who they want to represent their values. So now a group of Washington sheriffs has been urging Governor Bob Ferguson, after the bill was signed, to veto sections of this before he puts his signature on it. They're waiting to find out if in fact this is going to happen. In addition to allowing the Criminal Justice Training Commission to decertify sheriffs. The bill says that they have to meet new eligibility requirements, which include having at least 5 years of full time, uninterrupted law enforcement experience. Not having done or said anything that would get your state certification revoked by the CJTC. And the commission could do that for misconduct. And that's where the question is in this bill. What constitutes misconduct? Many have suggested that an outspoken sheriff, say the leggings of, Keith Swank of Pierce County, him posting things on social media that the Criminal Justice Training Commission could take issue with could potentially get him decertified. Well, there's a lot of pushback on that. So here is part of my conversation that I had this morning with Mason County Sheriff Ryan Sperling.
They want to control what sheriffs say. And this is one of those wrestling match, because I hear politicians say things that aren't necessarily true all the time, yet they're not necessarily held accountable. But sheriffs are in a different category according to a lot of people. So that's one of those things that they're wrestling through. Should sheriffs be political? Should we be able to say, or should it be controlled? And this bill effectively will mute sheriffs because of the threat of being decertified and removed. By the way, the RCW is written in the decertification portion, not necessarily in this bill, but in the decertification. They had to modify the bill so that the King County Sheriff wouldn't be removed because she didn't have 5 years of continuous law enforcement as a fully commissioned. She'd been involved with law enforcement, but she wasn't commissioned. So she would have been removed. So they did modify that to protect her and a few other people within. And there's a chief of police that was protected as well. So some of that stuff is rather interesting. My big concern, again, is taking away a sheriff's ability to speak out politically. It's stifling, because I represent my constituents just like any elected official. And if my constituents are pushing me to stand up against something that Olympia is doing, I'm going to speak out, or depending on the level or the degree, we're going to say something, and this is going to potentially stifle that, and again, control the First Amendment rights, or take away the First Amendment rights of an elected official.
Now, before it passed, lawmakers did include a couple of amendments to clarify that the 5 years of experience provision doesn't apply to current sheriffs. They did that because they wanted to protect Pacific County Sheriff Daniel Garcia, Navy veteran who won office without any prior law enforcement experience, but because of his decorated military service, his community wanted him to be the sheriff. So they made a special carve out for him that will make sure that he's not decertified by this legislation. As reported by the Center Square, Kitsap County Sheriff's candidate Rick Cuss is likely to be the first casualty of this legislation. He is a retired U.S. Navy officer. He holds a master's degree in criminal justice and has served as a deputy with the King County Sheriff's Office since 2023. But despite that military leadership and active patrol experience now with King County, the bill's strict uninterrupted employment timeline in law enforcement would disqualify him from appearing on the ballot. He told me when we last spoke a couple of weeks ago about this, that at this point, he's just kind of keeping on with his campaign towards the ballot in November, assuming there will be some legal challenges that potentially could put this bill, after it's signed into law by the governor, and he's said that he will, after this is signed into law, he's hoping the legal challenges will maybe put it on hold, and then he could potentially be elected in November. And, maybe there will be some exceptions made for that. So that's another bill we are closely watching for the governor's signature on, and intend to be there when that bill is, in fact, signed into law. All right, so let's move on to the Puyallup School District. I feel like we've talked a lot about the Puyallup School District, and I've written a number of articles in recent months. And the school district is once again under fire. This time it is for some artwork that was up in a classroom up until as recently as last week. I don't know how long it was up in this classroom, It was a student who took a photo of this piece of artwork, and then sent it to Undivided podcaster Brandy Cruz. She's the one who posted this on Facebook and talked about it in her podcast, and it blew up on the internet, and that's how it came to our attention. The student also gave us permission to use the photo. That student does not want their name attached to it, maybe for some obvious reasons, don't want pushback from their teacher or fellow classmates. But here you can see the photo of that piece of artwork. It shows President Trump in different ways as a pig. There's a flag above, one that says assassination. There's also Trump depicted as a member of the KKK with a hood on. It says, "Yes, we Klan." President Trump in one of these pictures, kind of depicted as a creepy McDonald's clown. There's one that shows him as a pig that shows nooses on either side, even a drawing that shows him mostly nude. Um, Obviously provocative. Sometimes artwork is intentionally provocative. We have not seen a copy of what the sort of specifics were for this assignment. Was it supposed to be politically provocative? What exactly this assignment detail was, we have not received that information. We're hoping to get some additional specifics from the Puyallup School District, but they did send me a response in part when I reached out late last week to say, what gives that. By the way, if I didn't already say this, the artwork has since been taken down. So that's, something that's obviously because of the pushback here and the attention on social media. But part of the statement from the school district, it says, when classroom displays disparage individuals or violate district policies, we take action to ensure our learning environments remain respectful and inclusive for all students, staff, and families. Student expression, including the exploration of current events and political topics, is an important part of learning, particularly in courses like visual arts. We're addressing the situation in alignment with district policy and professional expectations. Now, we have also asked, is the teacher going to face any disciplinary action? District basically says, we're going to be looking into this. Um, Collective bargaining agreements sometimes preclude members of the media when things like this happen. And even if there is discipline or any kind of consequence for the teacher, we often are precluded from finding out because of protections in their collective bargaining union agreements. We're going to be hoping that we can find out more. I want to remind you as well, the district has been in the news quite a bit. I mentioned that earlier, including for a couple of stories we have published. One of those was an alleged sexual assault against a female Puyallup high school wrestler by a trans wrestler. Mind you, the alleged victim here did not know she was wrestling against a boy, a biological male, at the time of the meet. That's being investigated. The other was Jody Holman's daughter, Eleanor, who's 16. She ran away. And according to her mother, the school district facilitated basically her daughter's decision to sever guardianship with her family without their knowledge. She was apparently suffering some gender confusion. And her mom says had dealt with some mental challenges before. And the parents claim only when they came to the Puyallup School District a few years ago did their daughter start sort of talking about some gender confusion. Um, so, lots of interest in the Puyallup School District, plenty of national attention on this. In fact, I think at this point, there's a Department of Education investigation that is open into the district. So today I chatted with Senator Chris Gildon of Puyallup about all of this to inquire what the heck is going on with Puyallup schools.
What was the situation in which this assignment was given? Was this given with a leaning towards eliciting that type of artwork, or was it given in a neutral manner and just the instructor chose to display the most controversial pieces of it, which I think it was very controversial. If you like President Trump or if you don't like President Trump, I think, having artwork on display with the words assassination and, an image of his hair, I guess it was, and then another image of him with nooses around his, to the sides of his head. I think that's very controversial, and I think that's outside of the community standards, whether it's President Trump, President Biden, or Obama, or whoever the person is, any person. I think we should be teaching students how to disagree and talk about politics without dehumanizing other people.
Mhm.
And honestly, I think that's a lesson that a lot of adults in our state, as well as politicians, would do well to remember as well. There is an avalanche of information that's coming from the Puyallup School District that's making the news in very negative ways. It's not shining a good light on our school district right now. And I certainly think that the school district needs to do something to regain the trust of the community and the parents.
So, as I mentioned, the anti Trump artwork has been taken down, and we wait to find out if there will be any consequence for the teacher who allowed it to be put up, or if we get to find out if, in fact, there's any discipline or consequence for this teacher at Puyallup High School. They often don't provide that information. So that is a wrap on today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. We are keeping an eye on that income tax bill when the governor's going to sign that, as well as the sheriff's decertification bill. So stay tuned tomorrow. We may have an update on that. Regardless, we're going to be following it. I promise to stay right on top of it. I appreciate you watching. Have a great day.